I've had a dual career as an analyst, a small practice, while teaching full-time at the university for 46 years, and then retired 5, 6 years ago. I always had a practice, but it was a small practice. After retirement from the university, I expanded, and I have a pretty full practice now, and it's ongoing.
You said that you love your work, and it's evident. What do you find the most challenging about your job?
Well, it's people come and they're a puzzle. You see, like people pay me to work on a puzzle. They are the puzzle, and we work together on the puzzle. They're puzzled. Why else would they come to a therapist if they weren't puzzled? And we work on this. We puzzle about their lives together, and sometimes we make progress and we sort things out and we make discoveries, and those discoveries help. And they feel relief, and we get somewhere. But one of Freud's concepts was resistance. Some patients are very highly resistant. And I find that frustrating. Some people really powerfully want to get well. They know that they are sick in some sense. They know that there is pathology. They want to confront it. They're willing to bear the pain of therapy. They're willing to hear the truth, even though sometimes the truth hurts. I sometimes, or much more now than when I was a younger therapist, I'm pretty direct with patients. I will tell them very directly that, they got to stop that. Because if they continue to do that, they're going to continue to have the nightmares or the rashes or the migraines. Because every time they do that, they get, but some patients, you can't talk to them. You can't talk turkey with certain patients. You can't tell, some patients just are very resistant to the truth. They're thin-skinned, highly narcissistic. Basically, their attitude is, okay, this is a bit of a joke, although a therapist did tell me this story. This man comes to him and he says, like, I have a very strong sex drive, and I've always had to cheat on my wife, and I've always had multiple mistresses. But I suffer from guilt around this, and I'd like you to help remove the guilt. Well, now that's a guy I can't work with. I'm going to say, listen, you got the guilt because you're an adulterous cheater. The only way you're going to get rid of the guilt, my friend, is to stop cheating. Okay, I'll write that on the prescription pad for you. He's not going to come back.
So what do you find the most rewarding? What makes you love the work?
When people actually get better, and they really start changing. I don't change them. I help them decide to change in certain ways, and they make positive changes in their lives. And as a result of the positive changes they make, good things happen. Their wives like them more. Their wives are more loving to them. Their children like them better. Their children are thriving more. Their physical health is getting better. Their friends are appreciating them because they're being better human beings to the people around them, and they're starting to get the rewards of being a better human being. They are becoming more creative. A lot of people are blocked in their creativity. They've got all kinds of talent and so on, but they may have a streak of self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. They may be these people who limit themselves. They'll allow themselves to have this much success, but you can't go over that. And I help them release that, and they're able to become much more successful and creative. So that's very satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever find that your work is draining, and how do you practice self-care?
Yeah, it is tiring. I mean, people often don't understand that. I don't think I understood it, actually, for many years when I was younger. But now, being older, I'm aware of the fatigue. Um, how do I practice self-care? Well, I mean, I have a wife who loves me, and I need her love, and I ask for it, and I get it, and that cheers me up all the time. Her love,
Mm.
you know, I found my soulmate, and she's a sweetheart. Now she's a psychoanalyst too, so we've got lots to talk about. She's trained in a different school of psychoanalytic thought than
Which
I am, and so we don't always work the same way.
which
She's
one?
she's called a modern analyst, the Spotnitz School. They have a training in New York, Philadelphia, Boston. Their leader was Hyman Spotnitz, who founded the journal Modern Psychoanalysis, and they do things that IPA analysts don't do, and I've learned a lot from her. But we still practice in somewhat different ways, although not that different. I have a colleague who wrote a paper that I published in the Canadian Journal called The Need for an Analytic Friend. She's saying, and she happens to be married to an analyst. So it's great if you're married to a fellow analyst. You've got your analytic friend. But if you're not married to an analyst, you need to find a close friend who is an analyst, or a group of friends who are analysts who you trust and who you meet with regularly, at least once a month, if not a couple of times a month. And you discuss cases together, and you trust them so much you can actually confess really your countertransference problems, the kinds of things that are really troubling you and making you feel guilty about your work or making you feel ashamed. You trust them enough that you can let your hair down and talk. You have to have that kind of community. And so that's a part of self-care. I mean, I try to turn the iPad off, if not get it out of the bedroom altogether, so I can get to sleep at a necessary time each night, because if I don't have enough sleep, I'm not very good the next day for my patients. It sort of cheats the patients because I'm overtired. So I have to make sure I eat well. I exercise. Now I used to exercise by walking,
Mm-hmm.
but now I got to stay in the damn house. So the only exercise I do is I go to the basement and I walk to the top floor and I go back and forth climbing stairs. And I have 10 minutes between each patient. And I try to climb a few flights of stairs during that 10 minutes between patients.
Oh,
And that's about the best I can do at the moment, but I'm really looking forward to being able to get back to walking again.
so you're not one of those therapists who try to do their notes right in between patients.
Well, you know what? For a long time, I just spoke my notes into my iPad.
So you have a family of analysts, your wife, your son, you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He's
Uh,
been practicing for he graduated from our 2-year psychoanalytic psychotherapy program, and then he went on into the full analytic training. But he's been surrounded by psychoanalysis his whole life. He lives and breathes. And I mean, I never pressured him to follow in my footsteps. He just wanted to do it. So we have lots to talk about.
wow, that sounds so fun.
Yeah, we just did a course together. He and I taught a series of 4 classes together in the program that he graduated from, the 2-year program. And so it was really fun teaching with him. But the interesting thing was that the students really liked it because they liked seeing a father and son who clearly like each other and cooperate, and we weren't squabbling, and I wasn't trying to establish paternal dominance over him, and he wasn't trying to show up the old man. We just, we were like collegial. That was nice. It was nice for people to see that. I'm very happy about that relationship, obviously.
Is any of that class on your YouTube?
That's him. I put up that video that I turned into a podcast on Otto Kernberg. It's on my YouTube channel. There's no video. It's just all audio. But
Oh,
you'll
I
hear me
see.
referring to Nick in there, and I'm asking, "Can you put the chart up now, Nick?" or whatever. And then, "Well, what do you think of this, Nick?" And he's speaking a fair amount, so you'll hear the two of us if you listen to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. What do you do when you experience secondary trauma, transference, or have worked a particularly challenging case?
Well, Look, I do not define myself as in any way an emergency. I'm not an emergency psychiatrist. Psychoanalysis is not for emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
Psychoanalysis is something that takes place over time. I see my patients once up to 4 times a week. And I'm no good in emergencies. What do you want? You're the last person you want in an emergency is a psychoanalyst. If you're in an emergency and you're really in trouble, you go to the emergency department of the local hospital, where there are emergency psychiatrists and people who will shoot you full of the appropriate drug and do emergency interventions. That's not anything I can do. So, I mean, if someone has suicidal levels of depression or whatever, and they want to work with me analytically, I will work with them around what's going on, why they're thinking of suicide, what is this about. But I mean, if you're going to jump in front of the subway, there's no point in calling me.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing I can do. If you call me, I'll call the cops. I'll hit 911. But what's the point? It took me a long time to come to understand this, that it's not my role. You know, God saves people. I don't. I don't even cure people. Sometimes God chooses to cure people through me, maybe. I help him. I'm putting God in quotes because I have a very complicated theological orientation. I don't believe in God in an ordinary sense, but I don't disbelieve in God either. So, but what I'm saying is I've learned that my limitations, I have limitations. I can do so much. It takes a long time. It takes regular appointments. It takes the patient's cooperation. Ultimately, the patient has to arrive at the decision to change their lives. I don't change them. And coming to me and lying down on the couch however many times a week doesn't change them. At a certain point, they decide that they have to change something. Mm-hmm. And they change it, or they don't change it, whatever. You see, so I have a real sense of my limitations. And having that sense of my limitations means I don't put impossible demands on myself. So I don't beat myself up if a patient gets worse, harms himself. I'm doing my best to talk things through with him. And there are limitations to my responsibility. So I don't get traumatized that much. I mean, I feel the patient's pain, and it hurts. It hurts. But at the end of the session in which he's in despair, I say, well, that's all our time for today. Mm-hmm. And he leaves. And I feel badly that he's in such pain, and I hope when I see him next, he'll feel better, but I'm not going to lose sleep about it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be having insomnia worrying about him. No, mm-hmm. He's my patient. This is a profession. I'm a professional.
Yeah, and I suppose too much worry could also, I mean, that could be interpreted as a kind of a split.
Yes. Yes, and a bit of omnipotence on my part. Mm-hmm. Like I'm being a bit grandiose. I find that young therapists often have this problem. They're a bit grandiose. Their narcissism wants them to be more important to their patients than they can be, and than they ought to be. Mm-hmm. And they pay a big price for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Last question. Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for me and other psychologists in training in terms of self-care when working with grief and loss and trauma?
First of all, recognize that what you need to do is to help the patient do the necessary grieving. You're not there to help them get rid of it. Mm-hmm. You're not there to help them get over it. They're going to be tempted to use manic defenses to somehow pull themselves together and get over it and march on, which is only going to make them worse in the long run. So your job is to give them an opportunity to grieve. Mm-hmm. So you need to understand that for sure. And again, I guess it's the point about omnipotence. You're there to assist a healing process that takes time. You don't have a magic wand.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make it go away.
You know, some of my most resilient clients, they have, you know, horrific stories. And if I, you know, when I ask, how do you do it? I mean, they're 10 times out of 10, you know, they say, well, I just kept moving. I
Right.
just kept on. And I wonder how that is the same or different than, you know, what you're describing from a manic behavior. Is that what you said?
Well,
Or
it might not be manic. It might just be, listen, they say where there's life, there's hope.
mm,
Okay? These are people who want to go on living. They've not allowed themselves to be completely crushed. They've had these horrible, painful things happen to them, but they've kept on marching because they want to live. I would think of that as eros. That's the life drive. They
mm,
are not surrendering to the death drive. I would say, well, good on you. You know, that's your strength.
right.
That's your strength. You want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Good, good. Um, um, so and so then, you know, you want to help them carry on, but even though they're still trudging on, they're carrying a huge burden on their back. And you want to help them unpack and lighten that burden. They're carrying guilt. They're carrying all kinds of fantasies and feelings that are making it worse. Um, that's where the mourning, you help them unpack what's in that heavy pack that they're carrying.
Mm-hmm.
And you help them lay down and let go of certain of the things in that pack so that life becomes a little lighter and moving on becomes easier. But it's a very good sign that they kept on trudging. The manic defense would be they'd be pretending they were flying. Oh, that trauma, I can take anything.
I see.
That's manic. I can take anything. Pile it on me. I'm Superman. Meanwhile, the guy's almost breaking down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.